Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan. With me on this journey of Secret Invasion is Casey McGeorge. How are you today, Casey?
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
It's going good. I just said my first name, but I can't say your name without the full name because it sounds so good, like the Casey McGeorge. Like it just flows out of my mouth.
Sure, if you say so. I'll take your word for it.
It's probably better than the last name Wiegand that nobody can pronounce anyway.
You'd be
Um,
surprised how many people mess up on McGeorge.
really?
Uh, I mean, in all fairness, if you look at some things, we all, especially when you're reading something off of paper,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes your brain just
Yeah.
puts stuff in. I've been called McGregor,
Oh
McGregory.
yeah.
So I mean, I get it. It
I used to
happens.
get mail that would say "We Guard," like the N would be an R. Um, yeah,
Look, I see mail every day
that's true.
that has some things on it that I just can't explain.
Hmm.
So
But we're not a mail podcast. I mean, we are males on a podcast, but we're not a
pretty
podcast
much.
about the postal service. So we will move on to talking about the second episode of Secret Invasion, which was called Promises, directed by Elise Salim, who I did not credit last week, so apologies there. And then the teleplay was Brian Tucker with a story by Brant Engelstein and Brian Tucker.
Okay,
And it
what
premiered.
is the teleplay?
So what that means, teleplay is like the actual script was written by Brian Tucker, but the story by means like there was probably an outline with Brant Engelstein working on the outline as well. So he gets credit for that as well.
Okay.
And then it was premiered June 28th, 2023 on Disney Plus. Let me see if I can find what um, their short little
Synopsis.
synopsis was, because I'm out of practice on this. I don't do many on TV shows anymore. So many podcasts based on TV shows. So I'm like out of practice on. I was in a flow when we always did Superstore. Okay, here we go. Fury grapples with past and present. I knew it was something really short.
I think that's the exact. Yeah, well, that's the exact one Disney Plus had up there because it was just one sentence long. So when I clicked the thing and I was before I clicked play on the show to play it, I wanted to see what it was, and it was basically it was literally just that
Yep.
one sentence.
Yep.
Here you go, figure it out, enjoy the show. Okay.
I feel like Disney Plus does that the most out of any of the streaming services. It'll be like this week on The Mandalorian, right? And you'll read the synopsis, and it's like Mandalorian helps Grogu with an issue, and you're like, okay, I don't know anything that's going on with this synopsis.
Maybe it's just the shows I've been watching, but on Hulu you get like a paragraph.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like with like Marvel and Star Wars and stuff, they try to like keep it vague so it's not like too spoilery. But sometimes it's like, all right. I mean, Fury grapples with past and present could be literally probably any of these episodes. But this one was called Promises. We kind of get a focus on all of the promises that he had made to them and that the Skrulls had made to Fury. So, and you could probably even go deeper with that with Rhodey and Fury and just promises throughout the whole um, theme of any of these characters. But I do just want to say at the beginning, my wife and I had a laugh about this because it comes on the screen, it says 1995, and it's showing all the highlights from Captain Marvel pretty much. And it pops up in big letters 1995, and my wife's like, so this takes place in 1995? And I paused it and I was like, yeah, that's what these big numbers mean. I think she was asking about the whole show
Oh, the
because
entire
every time we
series, not
watch,
just.
yes, anytime we watch any show about like Star Wars or Marvel, she always wants to know where it fits into the continuity.
And that makes sense. If you got someone, I don't know, I don't know your wife that well, so I don't know how much she watches all of these with
Mm.
you. Obviously, this is a big part of your life.
Yeah, she watches
Consequently,
them,
it's gonna be part of her life.
doesn't pay as
But
much attention to them.
yeah, it
Yes,
doesn't mean it's gonna be a huge part of her life. It's something.
right.
It's probably something more she tolerates in some aspects.
Yeah, yeah.
But in a marriage, there's gonna that's how it is. Like you're gonna have some things of hers that don't interest you as much, but you're along for the ride somewhat, and then you kind of go from there.
Yeah, so then when a couple minutes later it it flashed 1997, I paused it and I said, "So this part is going to take place in the year 1997."
I'm lucky you're still alive, and I'm doing a podcast with you right now.
She enjoyed it. She was joking along with me, you know. And then it flashed London, and she was like, "Oh, in London," and I was like, "Yes,
But which London?
yes,
There's
yeah,"
more
because
than
it could have
one.
been many Londons. Um, I like that this was their way of kind of doing like a previously on for the Captain Marvel stuff. How they kind of just showed 1995, and it could pretty much just showed every, you know, because I haven't seen Captain Marvel in a bit either. So getting the refresh of like Ben Mendelsohn's character in that, and the fact that Coulson was a Skrull in that movie, I like totally lost it in my
I
mind,
forgot
forgot.
about that.
So that was all really cool. And then 1997 comes, and it's kind of like the aftermath, right? Because we saw at the end of Captain Marvel, she's leading the Skrulls somewhere, and we find out that they haven't really found anywhere for them. And that was kind of a question I had last week was, you know, how much did they actually try? And it does look like they've tried, and then they came back here, and Fury's like, look, I'm gonna need your guys' help with my stuff, and I'll never stop looking for a place for you all. And we also see a young Gravik is
Yes.
introduced to Fury at this point
So
too.
they do have a little bit of history together.
And I wonder if we're going to get more history there, because the person that introduces Gravik to Fury is, spoiler alert,
I was gonna
the
say, do we
the
see her
scroll
later
the
in
scroll
the
that
show?
is his wife. Yeah, yeah. So did they almost have like a parental familial relationship at some point?
Remember, I made the joke last week. I thought maybe Gravik was Fury's son in some way.
Yeah, you did. That's right. That's right.
And I mean, I was okay. You've already spoiled this, so we see that Fury is married to a Skrull.
Hmm.
And aside from how the genetics and the act of that would even work, right? We're
Right, right.
talking alien DNA and various other things, and we can go that whole route. And there was the miniseries V, which I love from back in the day. Did some stuff on it.
How about the
Whatever.
remake? 2009.
Morena
Elizabeth Mitchell
Baccarin.
was in it, right? And
I,
Marina Baccarin. Yeah, all of them.
I, I was a fan of that, and it got canceled, unfortunately. But so
Yeah,
we know he's not his natural son, right? Which I made the
yeah,
joke of
yeah.
last week. But they obviously share a history. He obviously has interacted with him and had dealings with him since he was an Earth child, I guess, considering he's probably like 88 in scroll years or whatever, right? We don't
Yeah,
know.
that's so weird.
But, we don't know. Maybe we'll see that he did raise him in some aspects. I don't know. So there is a familiar connection there, and that kind of puts things like as I watched the first episode, the way they were showing Fury and Gravik, you could tell there was a history there. Like
Hmm.
there was something there, and I couldn't quite
And they
place my
they
finger
kind of
on
talked about it where they're like, what, like Gravik felt let down or something by Fury, like that kind
it.
of thing.
Yeah, and most people won't use words like that unless you're a parent,
Mm-hmm.
or in some sort of relationship like that, or you have really intimate dealings in some way with somebody, like a mentor mentee relationship, or something like that. So
Well, you know, and I think that's kind of the way I want them to go here, because I think it adds a whole nother layer to the show if, like, especially that he turned into Fury to kill Maria, right? And you have that, and if it is like a parental type relationship that he had with him, it's like really twist it. Then that's kind of where he went with it. And one thing I've noticed with Fury and the way he handles the scrolls is he's very delicate with them. Like when he first meets up with Talos again last week, he like puts his forehead to his forehead. That's
yeah,
very intimate thing, and he does the same thing to Gravik when Gravik's a kid. So I don't know if that's just how, I forget if that's part of what scrolls do a lot, but that's the way Fury is always interacting with them. So I kind
yeah.
of find it curious on
I,
that.
I thought maybe that was a scroll thing, but I don't
I thought I
know.
remember them like leaning their heads against each other as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, just because that's just an odd thing for a person to do.
Hmm.
And you know, I've talked about before. I was in the army, and I've been to a few different countries, and you know that every culture kind of has their own different things. And one thing we would have classes before we would go to certain countries or whatever, and different things, and they would kind of give us a little, like a just a quick thing on some of that countries or that region's cultures and customs. So when we would see certain things or interact in certain ways, we wouldn't be taken totally aback by it, you know, and various things like that. So you kind of, at least for me, like I kind of understand that, like, okay, especially if you're in their country or you're interacting with them in certain ways, sometimes the best way to ingratiate yourself with someone is to not necessarily adopt their cultures or practices, but to at least show enough respect to it, you know, to you know. So I thought maybe that was a scroll thing, and that was always Fury showing at least some sort of respect to the scrolls in some way to at least try and ingratiate himself to them. But I don't know. And
Yeah,
especially now that we find out he's married to one, that takes a whole different meaning. You never know.
exactly. I wonder when that started. If that started after this meeting in 97, or if he'd had a relationship with this lady since 95 after first looking for a home for them, or
Kind of want to know more about this lady that ended up getting the heart of Nick Fury.
yeah, like what exactly is it about her that made him fall in love?
Because let's be realistic. I know. I think I'm pretty sure Sam Jackson is married in real life, but between the characters he's played a lot and Nick Fury, it doesn't look like that guy's opening his heart very much. Like, so if
Yeah.
he's gonna open his heart, like, there's got to be a reason.
And yes, he is married since 1980. Just double check that. It's a long marriage. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that is. I'm really curious about how they're going to go about this with the wife, and I've seen some people think that like speculate he doesn't know she's a Skrull. I think that was for our reveal, right? Like I think if we're going to focus on that, we see her cutting up and like cooking food, and she turns from Skrull into her more like human look as he's coming into the turning into the kitchen. I think that was for us. Um, I don't think that was like I don't think it's a shock to him because I mean there could be like security cameras in the house that would catch her all the time. Fury's got this place locked down, so
I,
I think he would know.
I had to watch that portion. I know we're skipping way ahead, but I had to watch that like twice because I was watching it and I saw Scroll cutting stuff up, right? And I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. I saw Fury kind of walk in there, and then I saw this black lady, and I was like, and then you know, they got kind of intimate, they kissed or whatever, and then you know, or he went back, put his wedding ring on, and they kissed and everything, and I was like, wait a minute, wait. I had to rewind it. I was like, I was like, didn't I just see her as a scroll? But then I have questions like, is that really Nick Fury or is that a scroll Nick Fury?
Oh yeah,
Which
true.
I doubt, but you never
Yeah.
know. And then I just, it's one of those things. It was a good way to end the episode.
Yeah, definitely. That left me wanting more. That was a very good. I'm very actually. I've seen some people down on the show. I really think the first two episodes have captured the exact tone I want from this. I know I talked about it last week, but like this, like Winter Soldier espionage conspiracy type show is exactly what I wanted from this, and so far I'm getting that like at a high level. Like I'm pretty. I think the guy who wrote this. The main writer I think is the guy who wrote Mr. Robot, which I haven't seen but I've heard good things about, and it's kind of like the same sort of tone. So
And it's not only at a high level as far as, you know, the writing is really well done and everything, but it's at a high level because we're dealing with, as we will talk about later, high levels of government,
yeah,
like very high levels of government that usually with a lot of these with spy stuff, you kind of get like these, I don't want to say bureaucrats, but they're at like CIA, NSA level. So if it's high up, it's high up at their level where it's like executive directors or specialist vice president, directors of this region, blah blah blah. But as we talk about and see later, we're looking at we're looking at very high levels of government executives and leaders of countries and things, and it's intriguing.
Yeah, because we're seeing people. I like the way they kind of do this, where they show everyone on like TV, right? Like they show the Fox News guy, they show the um like
The
the
guy in charge
NATO,
of yeah, the NATO or
yeah,
the
the
UN
NATO
Security
guy, the
UN
prime
Security
minister
Council, yeah.
for England, and you're seeing like news clips of them, and then yeah, like you said, later they're all in that room with Gravik. They are all Skrulls, and they're all against him at first until he kind of just has one of his
Karate
uh
chop to the neck.
yeah, guy karate chopped the NATO guy's neck, and they're like, okay, never mind. We're gonna follow you to the ends of the earth here. You are our one and only chief now. Because I think that is funny. We see this kind of stuff in real life a lot, where people will almost gladly give up their democracy for safety, and that was kind of Gravik's point. Was we're in the middle of a war. Democracy doesn't work for wars. Let me have all of the power as a general, and we'll go back to the democracy afterwards. I don't think Gravik would have actually give up his power after they've
Does,
taken over Earth either,
does
though.
anybody ever like has
Other than
history?
George Washington, I think no. I mean, because I think yeah, power corrupts, right? Is kind of the saying. So you have this guy who's power hungry and is one in control, and we find out through Talos and this train ride with Fury, which I thought was a great scene. I really liked getting like background on Nick Fury and his mom, and like them riding the train when he was young.
Tell me
And
something I don't know.
yeah, the Tell Me Something I Don't Know game. And Talos tries to skirt around it a bit until Fury's like, I said, tell me something I don't know. And he says that there's a million of them on Earth, a million Skrulls who have been integrated into our culture since at least 1995.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have to look at it. There's at least a million because I don't know how long the scroll gestation period is, but I'm sure there's been scrolls added and subtracted in various ways throughout the
Maybe.
time. So at least a million, plus or minus, right? Okay, cool. Um, it's not totally a lot based on population, considering China has billions of people, blah blah blah. But that's a lot. Like there's a million. That means in this reality, in the MCU, which we already know has acknowledged that there are gods in Thor, and that there are other aliens. And I mean, you had the Battle of New York. Thanos has wiped out half of the population, and they brought it back, and so on and so forth. There's a million aliens on this planet from another country, or not, I'm sorry, not country, from another planet, living on this planet who we cannot tell who they are. We do not know who they are. And most of them are probably just law abiding citizens going about their daily lives. Very eerily connected to what's going on in our country today. But I wonder if this is ever going to come out to the world in this show or in the aftermath. Because that I can imagine the xenophobia that can come out from it. Like I mean there are people who don't even like the fact that there are various mixed races in our own country, right? But if imagine how people are going to feel when they find out people they're dealing with might not even be showing their true faith or face rather, and you never know what's going to come of that. Like that is I they wanted to
The
build a
thing too
damn
is
wall. Like
they can't just become human. They are taking the form of another human. So at that point, they've had to somehow incapacitate the human, right? They either have him locked up like the people do in the Skrull community, or they took care of him, and they steal their memories, and they effectively become them, but they also have their own memories too that Yeah, it's a you don't know who to trust.
Like so, and I can understand Nick Fury's. Okay, so I can understand both sides from Talos and Nick Fury. Nick Fury's angry because he did not know that Talos sent out this call, and now there are a million Skrulls living on planet Earth. But you have to look at it from Talos. If you look at it from Talos's point of view, Fury's been gone doing all these other crazy things, and he's been off the planet. And I'm not saying Fury was not trying to find them a place to live, right? But I go down weird YouTube wormholes sometimes, and I find very fascinating things, especially when they come up with the number of galaxies and planets that they truly believe are out there. Like the number is astronomical, right? And then even the number that could sustain human life. I don't know. Once again, we don't know the genetics of the Skrulls. Obviously, they can survive where humans can, but they can probably survive on other planets and various things. So that probably compounds it in the number of planets that they can live on. But Fury's been out with Captain Marvel for a while, and now in modern times he's up doing whatever he was doing with Saber. Can't imagine it's easy to get a hold of somebody. Like we saw in She-Hulk when Hulk kind of left, and he was having a conversation with Jennifer, and all of a sudden they just kind of lost contact because his iPhone stopped transmitting, I guess, from
Right,
wherever
right.
he was. So Talos probably just had to make a determination, like, hey, just all right, everybody, come on over. We'll figure something out when you get here.
Yeah, he probably felt abandoned as well. But I do wonder if the twist is going to be that Fury was on Saber for so long because he's trying to find them a home. Like, I mean, I could see that being the thing where the reason he was working so hard is he realized because he blipped that he almost let down on his promise. Right. So now he came back and he's like, I got to make this right. And I'm going to immediately try to find them a place. And he's just been working overtime on it. I wouldn't be shocked if that's kind of the reveal we get at
Yeah,
some
he
point.
did. He did kind of lose 5 years of time there with the
Yeah.
blip. Um, Also, so let's go back to Moscow in the beginning. Kobe Smulders had another special guest starring appearance for her 3 seconds on screen as Agent
Yeah.
Maria Hill. Cool. Hey, get your money, get the paycheck. I don't know how that works. If it's by
She should be
episode
paid for that episode. Yeah, she should. Yeah.
for the 3 seconds, but hey, do your thing, girl. I kind of the guy who grabbed Fury and was trying to throw him in the van. Eventually, I kind of got the gist that was probably Talos, and we saw that it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I know at first I was like, oh, did they see did they see Gravik as Fury shoot her and try to arrest him or something?
well, so that was the thing. I I remember I talked about last week how I thought there was going to be some CCTV footage or something like that was going to come out in Europe and Asia and a lot of places. Uh, if you're in public, they don't really care about your personal beliefs. Like you're on camera. There's CCTV footage that's kept all over the place. So in a place like I know it's probably not Red Square, but that's the only thing I can think of in Moscow where that bombing happened. I imagine there's tons of cameras out there, right? So yeah, eventually it was going to come out that Nick Fury shot Maria Hill. Or just and as we later learned, just the fact that two
That they were
American
there. Yeah.
agents were there at the bombings, and that's probably the biggest thing more than anything. The two agents were there at the bombings, so that makes it very easy to just blame those two for the bombings. Which, hey, I don't think that is a hard conclusion to jump to. I can see how they would make those connections, especially our two countries don't necessarily get along totally. So like,
Well, the
yeah,
thing is too that it's the conclusion Gravik wants them to come to, so it's the conclusion they're coming to, right? So we,
yeah,
we start seeing the Fox News guy, and the reason I keep calling him that is because it's FXN, right? Like it's
yeah.
pretty close.
They know what they're doing. They know what
Yeah,
they're
they
doing.
know exactly what they're same color scheme, all that kind of stuff. He is one of the scrolls, and at first he's like, I can guarantee USA had nothing to do with this because the that little council was trying to rein in Gravik. But once he doesn't rein him in, we see the prime minister turning on Rhodey. We see, you know, just the fact that all of these people in high positions were starting to turn on the Americans. That Rhodey, I think, at one point says like, our greatest allies are turned against us at this point. Like, you're making my life very difficult, Fury. And
who is the chick from Slovakia?
yeah, I don't know. It's just a random a random girl. I don't think she was on the council.
I don't know. So I know it's probably not NATO. I know there's a difference, but I know like with the UN Security Council, there's like 5 permanent members, and then the other seats rotate. It's like U.S., China, Great Britain,
Yeah.
France, and I think Russia has the 5th seat, right? So it's the permanent members, and then I don't know how big the council is. They rotate other members in and out. Maybe NATO kind of works, which, yeah, I think that was NATO. So maybe they work kind of in a similar way. I don't know. But so I can see like, okay, you got the United Kingdom, India, great, like some major powers that are up there. And obviously you're gonna like maybe it's just their turn, you're gonna have Slovakia or whatever. But I saw Slovakia kind of giving the side eye to Rhodey. And one, she's very attractive. Two, I don't like there's something weird about that. Like maybe they just put that there for comedic purposes.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. She was like smirking and like really giving it to
But
Rhodey.
there's I don't know. Sometimes they do things that come back from like episode 1.
Yeah.
So maybe this is something I don't know. But the woman from Slovakia there, just I don't know. I don't know if she is a Skrull. Maybe she's a Skrull on the other side. Maybe we find out it's little Amelia Clark there, right? Who I don't know, right? But there's something weird about the lady from Slovakia.
Yeah.
Where
It
Rhodey even
was,
said if she gives him side eye one more time, he's putting the suit back on. And he's gonna carpet bomb it.
you know, one thing I want to point out too, because I think this may have gone a little over the like quickly covered and like moved on from in the show, is when they're at the council and they're talking about how at one point on the train, Fury is asking Talos all about, again, like, tell me something I don't know about the invasion, right? Like, why you guys left your home. And he talks about them being like persecuted and hunted down. And that is kind of what we've been led to believe. But at the council at one point, one of the ladies says, like, hey, when Gravik wants to be like a warmonger, she's like, don't forget, like, why we left in the first place is because we were so predisposed to war. Like, they were so war hungry at one point, it sounded like. So I think it's kind of interesting. That maybe is another thing that Talos might be leaving out, if I understood that scene correctly anyway.
Or they were so quick to jump to go to war.
Yeah.
When it happened before. So I definitely would like to find out more about that. Let's talk about Rhodey here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
One, I forget. I remember he got paralyzed or something bad happened. I don't remember when he got his legs back, kind of.
I believe it was at the end of Civil War. He has like the braces on that can help him, and I think he wears them in Infinity War as well. Probably during the 5 years of the snap, he probably has regained his ability to fully walk.
Most of what I remember of him after he was usually in the suit anyway. So obviously that's going to help him with his legs and everything. And I'm sure Star Tech, did everything they could to help him out with that. But it just hit me like last week. It struck me for a second. I saw it this week. I was like, wait a minute. The last I remember, like he was rocking some pretty heavy leg braces there. He's an envoy for the United States government over to Russia. Obviously they had to do a lot of, I can't imagine the level of negotiations and various other things they had to do to get Hill's body back. And we'll talk about that in a second. But his conversation with Fury there, he's definitely more into the political thing now, which I guess that's just kind of where his career is taking him. I get it. I don't know what to make of Rhodes now.
Yeah, do you think he was a little unfair? Because I can kind of see his point when he says, like Fury says, we've been giving all this power to mediocre men like Alexander Pierce, right? Who is the bad guy in Winter Soldier. And he's like, I'm trying to wrestle that back. And then Rhodes is like, well, we didn't take all that power to give it to a mediocre man like you, pretty much is what he says to Fury. And I know he has some problems with Fury, I guess, but I think Nick Fury has kind of proved himself to be, uh, you know, a huge asset for the Avengers specifically, which Rhodey is a member of.
Okay, to an extent, and I'll say it this way. So we don't know much. I don't know much about what Rhodes did before, but obviously he worked his way up. He was a colonel, lieutenant colonel. I think at one point when it was Terrence Howard, he probably got promoted at some point, colonel, whatever. How he didn't make general, I never know. I'll never know. But whatever, right? He helped battle off aliens and things. Cool. But so coming from the military aspect, it's one thing. Most of Fury's work has been in the dark side of it, in the espionage and the things behind the scenes and the things that kind of set up these wars that men like Rhodes have to go to and fight for. So with people like that, in my military experience, everyone who's been in the military who has experienced working with like CIA or spooks of some level, is going to have a different experience. Most of the guys I worked with were pretty cool. But if you just take a step back sometimes, you look at stuff that the CIA has done in other countries that have started these wars and various other things. And it's then they get out of there, right? Sometimes there people stay back, help out with some things, but then most of them get out of there, and it's people who actually wear the military uniforms that go over there, do all the fighting, and die. Not to say people from the spook agencies and CIA don't give their lives up. They do, but not in as great numbers as people in the military. So for some people, in some levels, there is a combativeness between two people and two agencies like that in general, because one does his own set of work and doesn't really have to play by the rules a lot of times, kind of can just do what he wants. But then you have people like Rhodes who have a very defined set of rules and how they work and how they operate and how they expect to get things done and so on and so forth. And Fury has been an asset to the world and to the planet and to the Avengers and everything else. But I'm sure we may not have seen it. There has been clashes probably between those two before. And because remember, even with Stark, him and Fury have had some clashes kind of on some things about how they wanted or expected things to go. And then you kind of go with a more regimented person like Rhodey. Yeah, they might not get along. And I can see both sides. And like I said, Rhodes was right where he's like, you're making my job a lot more difficult. Like he's turned what he hasn't turned, but it appears that Nick Fury has turned every ally in the world against the United States. And that's like, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Yeah, it seems like everything's falling apart, and look, I do want to bring this up too because I kind of was reminded of something that I forgot about. It's been announced that William Hurt passed away. He was playing Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah.
Right? He was supposed to be in Captain America Brave New World. They've recast Harrison Ford as that role. It's come out and they've talked about it, so it's not like a spoiler, that Thunderbolt Ross is going to be the president in that movie. Well, we have a president in this series, President Ritson, who didn't bother to show up to this meeting at all. And in fact, Rhodey's very blasé about how they're pretty lucky that even Rhodey showed up, right? Like, he doesn't. It seems like we're being very usual cocky Americans at this point, right? But it makes me wonder now that I remember that Harrison Ford is going to be playing the president in a movie that comes out next year. Uh, if this guy's term is going to come to an end during this show due to something with Secret Invasion or him being a Skrull and that being revealed, or what exactly is going to happen here. So I'm really curious, especially since he missed the meeting. I'm very curious, like, what is going on there.
So my just quick thoughts. Uh, I believe, I think it could be a situation of, excuse me. Obviously, this is going to cause a lot of things with Russia. I think in the MCU, the people in our country will not be happy about that. I think either we will already be at war with Russia, or we will be on the verge of going to war with Russia. And if that's the case, especially with next year, 2024, being an actual election year. No, I don't. The MCU kind of follows our timelines somewhat closely, right? So it wouldn't be a stretch to say, even whatever year it is, maybe the current president is going for re-election, but running against him could be General Thunderbolt Ross.
That's a good point, because he would have so much.
He's a general. If we're already on the verge of war or we're at war, like, people may be more inclined to go with the military guy in that aspect, and it wouldn't be much for him to rah and get everybody behind him, and that could be how
he can even say, "Look, I stopped the Avengers in Civil War," right? Like, if people are against,
this could have happened 15 years ago if I had not came to the Avengers with the Sokovia Accords and made them realize the error of their ways. And
he could even say, like, Nick Fury created the Avengers, and if Nick Fury is public enemy number one still after this, he can be like, look, I've stopped him once, I can stop him again here. He helped turn all our allies against us. And now I do wonder how much of this is going to get out to the public, because so far I don't think they know about Skrulls, because Fury asked Rhodes about, like, how well do you know your security team here, and Rhodey kind of like dodges it a bit, like, what do you mean? And he's like talking about shape-shifting green people, and Rhodey's reaction is enough to tell him that he knows Skrulls exist.
Yeah,
but it seems like the most general public would have no clue.
Yeah, that I think the average person out there probably has no clue. I mean, they're still probably coming to terms with gods and the Shatari or whatever. And
I would not live in New York at this point in the MCU.
So I don't know. I don't think the average person would have any thought. Or you know what it is? I think it could be something like The Good Place, where there's a few people who probably do think they know something about.
But they're painted as conspiracy
theorists. Or, you ever watch Futurama?
Bits and pieces. Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, so obviously Futurama starts. There's a guy who gets frozen, goes 3,000 years, or to year 3,000, right?
Fry, right?
Yeah. At some point, Fry ends up he's his own grandfather, right? So at some point, they go back to the Roswell landing, and whenever that happened, and I think the president was FDR, whoever the president was. There's a cartoon clip. You can look it up. There's a clip. You can look it up on YouTube. It's like they go in there, and he's like, the guy's playing the president is like, that's why it's me. He's brought like one or two other people and like one weird dude from the press who everybody's gonna think is a crackpot. So like he brought like one reporter,
the National Enquirer guy,
but he was like everybody's just gonna think he's a crackpot, so they can always be like, well, he was there. We told you the truth, So, so maybe there might be some press people who are in on it, but nobody's ever gonna believe him. So one thing I did want to talk about, I cried during this episode. For two reasons. One, the dignified transfer of Agent Hill's body going back home hit me in a hard place. Seeing her family there, that I know this is gonna sound really silly, but that just was, it was emotional for me. I've had to deal with stuff like that. That really hit me hard, and I thought it was somewhat well done. The only bad thing, and this is just got a pet peeve, some of the salutes those guys in the background were rendering, like one dude was rendering like a British salute where he had his hand all the way up here like this, and
He's like, it's my time to shine. I'm
yeah,
on screen.
So having been in the army, when I look at stuff on TV from a military perspective, I've had to learn to let a lot of things go. Uniforms and how they wear them, and medals and pins and things. Like I've had to learn to be like, it's a movie. It is what it is. Even stuff how they act or how they would do things. Like once again, they have military advisors for it, but then how stuff would actually be done as compared to how well it's going to translate to being on camera, it's not always going to match up. So sometimes, like, it might be the worst thing in the world and it's horrible and it would never be done because people would die. But we got to do it this way on camera because it looks the best and gives the best presentation. It can get the audience behind it. But when I saw a dude with a Benny Hill salute like this, man, it hit me in a different way, and I was a little upset about that. Damn that.
It made you cry a different way, right?
Yeah, but seeing them, and like I said, I can't imagine the nut roll they'd had to go through to get Hill's body back home during that.
Rhodey mentions that, right? Like
he does. He talked about how they had to go through a ton. And her mom there, and then Fury meeting up with her mom. That was rough, because especially, I don't know if she's still part of S.H.I.E.L.D. or not, or with Saber and how that works. Obviously, that's a whole different organization. But they weren't being honest with her about, where her body was coming from and how she died. And sometimes that happens in the real world in general military aspects. Just because they don't like how it would look to the families, sometimes they don't always give the truest of information. Especially if you're dealing with like FBI, CIA stuff. I can imagine those agents, sometimes their family doesn't get the whole story of what was going on. So it's tough for her to know, because she may not even get the truth about why her daughter's not there. And then, she had to learn she was in Moscow and Fury was there. And I hope that woman's character I hope Agent Hill's family gets peace in this, and they find a way to make it right. Also, yeah, I think at the end of the scene with Rhodes and Fury, after he broke his bodyguard's arm and disarmed him, I think he should have slapped Rhodes. Like, I was waiting for it.
So you're Team Fury here on this debate here?
I've been with Nick Fury since the Avengers
2008
started.
Yeah, exactly.
He's, from what I've seen, he's shown he's shown that sometimes things are rough, but he's always going to find a way to get it done. And it's Samuel L. Jackson, man. Have you ever seen the College Humor video about everything gets blamed on Samuel L. Jackson?
No.
Yeah, I think it's College Humor, but he did one of those things. It's probably about 10 years ago, where he's walking down the street and he's like, "Oh, you're Samuel L. Jackson." Yeah, my kid says MF for all the time because of everything he watches you, and he's like, "You let your kids watch my movies?"
Right.
But it's like all these people come up to him and all of a sudden it's like they blame him because something he did in one of his movies or something like their kids are now doing, or now he's some person's now addicted to crack from one of his movies, and he's like, wait a minute, people, stop. So yeah, I'm Team Sam here. I'm Team Fury.
I thought his acting with Rhodey, he was very loose. You know what I'm saying? He was very, I feel like the most Sam Jackson I've seen him in this role, because he was letting his guard down of not being the smartest man in the room the way he usually is. Because, because we didn't talk about it, but Rhodey is there to fire him, right? From the government. And he volunteered for
it. He wasn't he says he volunteered for it. So that tells me right there, there's some history between the two. Okay, your supervisor in your current job I was a supervisor and I've been a manager at Walmart. I've had to let people go, both
Hmm.
for good reasons, right? Like, hey, you're stealing from the store. I gotta let you go. Like,
Right, right.
or for bad reasons, like just their performance hasn't been well, or they've missed too many days. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not something I like to do. If you like firing people, you're an a-hole, right? Like, let's just put it this way. Like, that's not a natural normal thing to do, right? So imagine whatever government meetings they have, and they're like, hey, uh, so like someone's got to meet up with Fury, and how do you fire him? Like does Fury get HR paperwork in an email or something like
Well, that
from
was funny too,
Sable?
because at one point Fury is like talking down the roads like that he's higher up, right? Like he puts him in his place a bit, calls him like Colonel or whatever. He's like, whatever. Like the way Fury was doing it was like so like you're beneath me, and then the flip gets scripted a bit where he's like, I'm here to fire you.
And then like he says, and he's like, they sent you here for that? He's like, no, I volunteered for it. So at some
Yeah.
point in this meeting, I can imagine there's a big table. There's probably 10, 15, 20 people there. And they're like, someone's got to go. At some point, someone's got to meet up with Fury, and we're going to have to let him go. And you see this one hand raise up, and it's Rose, and he's like, I got this. So
Yeah, and I do find that so interesting because Rhodes was always on. Like, if we look back at Civil War, which Fury wasn't in, I don't think, but the side of the government was the Sokovia Accord. So I felt like he would understand where that's coming from. But I guess, Rhodes is just so much more pro government. Even Iron Man 2, when they're talking about taking the suit, right? And he takes
yeah.
the suit from Tony. He burns a bridge with Tony there, and he's like, kind of, he like Tony lets him because Tony knows he's got to do what he's got to do, right? Like, there's kind of this balance of I know what you got to do, Rhodes, as a member of the Air Force, but I'm Tony Stark. I don't have to do that, and they do make up and become friends again after that, but just find it interesting how much Rhodes does let his duty, I guess, come first over any sort of history that he has with people.
But just the fact that he volunteered tells me
Yeah.
there's a history between those two that we
Yep.
haven't
Yep.
seen. There's something that's happened in the past that was cut from a film, or they never elaborated on, or we'll just never know about. That there's some tension between the two. So when he said he volunteered to come out there to fire him, he wanted that one.
Yeah. Um.
And seeing him break, I almost thought I was gonna see Nick Fury bust out an MFer in there. Like that would have been a perfect place for it. But
Yeah.
it's Disney, so obviously we'll never
We've
get the
got our
full.
first one. We've
We'll
got
never
our
get the
first one.
full. We'll never get the full one.
Oh, MFer, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
we won't get the full Samuel L. Jackson saying the full phrase. He got half of it out in Infinity War, right? And they showed a kind of a flashback from that last week, but we'll never get the full.
You haven't seen Guardians 3 though, right?
No, not
They
yet.
drop an F bomb.
Wow.
Yeah. They let James Gunn and get away with that.
And then seeing Fury hit the bench and kind of break down for a minute. And this is perfect storytelling in the aspect of, all right, we got this guy, like a typical spy thing. We got this guy, he's undercover, he does all these things, and everything's turned against him. So now he's got to like go deep underground and find some contacts that he probably hasn't talked with in years. And these people there's going to be this very small group of people who are going to be with this guy, and they're going to help him right all these wrongs, and he's got to fight his way back. And I kind of think that's where it is, except for the fact that he's married to a Skrull, and that kind of still bugging me.
Yeah, so he has lost everybody, right? Maria at the beginning of this episode is dead. He breaks it off with Talos when he finds out Talos was lying to him.
Yeah, kicked
And then
him
he
out the train
loses
car.
then he loses Rhodes. So like he is losing every single person that was, even if
Ross,
Rhodes was loosely on his side at
I
one
think
point.
I think
Yeah, we don't
Ross
know where
is.
Everett Ross
I
is.
think
I
he's
mean,
probably captured by the Skrulls, considering they turned had someone
yeah,
turn into
yeah.
him. So
Yeah, he's losing everyone at this point, and the only person he has left is maybe his wife, who he went to at the end of the episode. And we don't know what their relationship is even like, because if she is a parental figure to Gravik, there might be some strain there too. We don't really know, because she would be like, because Gravik lost both of his parents, and then she was kind of the one that kind of stepped up, I guess. So
yeah,
maybe she's Team Gravik. We don't really know. I hope not. I hope she. I hope he can rely on somebody here.
and I'll say this as well. After watching the opening credits again this week, I agree with you. They're just ugly.
Yeah, they're ugly.
Like they make no sense. It's just ugly, and Disney's got to scrap that. Sometimes you got to take an L and just.
Yeah, I don't know. They probably paid out the ass for it. I doubt they're going to scrap it for and create a new one. But I mean, they could just put up the last slide of it that just says Secret Invasion and move on. But
Yeah, because if you're jumping in episode 3, like.
yeah. But I guess then they need to put the credits somewhere, right? Because they need
Yeah,
to
in
credit
all
everyone.
fairness, all the people on the credits do deserve to have a time for their name to be shown on the credits. So,
Well, before we wrap it up, I do want to talk about a part that uh, kind of stood out to me as well in this episode, um, which was the Olivia Colman scene when she is Sonia Fallsworth and she is called in here, or I guess just kind of comes in here, I don't know, and interrogates this scroll. And for TV 14 or whatever this is rated, this was actually pretty graphic. I was actually kind of surprised here when she chops off that guy's finger and it turns to the green scroll color, and she's like, "Well, there you go, that's that." Like, and the way she played this performance of interrogating him was just
I forgot
so
about
good.
this, and we have to talk about this. Yes, okay. So, what character does Olivia Colman play? What is
Sonia Fallsworth,
who is Sonia Fallsworth?
an MI6 agent.
Okay, so you see this. I don't want to say middle-aged lady, but that's probably the best way to explain it. Like walk up to this butcher shop and open this door, right? The butcher comes out and he's like, "That door was locked." Well, I just came through it. So what does that tell you about doors? So she's a little more badass than we think, right? I can just imagine, like, all the only thing I can get is it was so well done, but imagine being tortured by Mrs. Poppins. Like that's the only like that's what was running through my head, and the way her mannerisms, and she was just like, okay, well, that's how it's gonna be then. And she was just she was just so nonchalant and matter of fact about everything, and it wasn't intimidating in any way, right? Usually when you see torture scenes like this, like there's some intimidation that goes along with it. There's fierceness, and like there's this time of tension. But she's just kind of just so happy-go-lucky about it, and she's just so nonchalant and does it, and it's just like that probably makes it even worse to be tortured by someone like that.
Now, I do want to just point out too, her name is Sonia Fallsworth. That name might ring familiar to Marvel comic fans who James Fallsworth is known as the Marvel hero Union Jack, where he wears the Union Jack flag on his body. But also, now, and I guess if this is correct here, Union Jack didn't appear, but James Fallsworth appeared in Captain America: The First Avenger as one of the Howling Commandos that was part of Cap's team.
Oh, the ones that when they were going around Germany
Yeah,
and
yeah, he was the British guy. So if that's true, and it's not just like people I would have to check how it's actually credited on the movie and stuff. But if that's true, then that's probably one of her relatives here. So even that would make more sense why Fury and her had such a relationship at some point too, because it seems like maybe the Avengers and her lineage kind of go back all the way to World War II. So I think that's very interesting.
She seems like she's kind of a badass along the lines of Agent Carter there though. And it's just
Yeah, so according to IMDb, by the way, J.J. Field is credited as James Montgomery Falsworth. So,
it's probably like her
yeah,
grandfather or something.
yeah, probably her grandfather.
But that whole scene just tickled me.
Oh yeah, I was laughing with her. Like she was like having such a ball doing that scene.
And like I said, that makes it so much worse to be tortured.
Yeah.
Like give me an evil scientist or some.
And what is she injecting into him? Something that makes his body hot or something?
I don't know, but it was just so good, and especially in the beginning where she knew eventually what's his name was gonna come, so she's like, "Where's the escape hatch?" Okay, thank you. You can go on now.
Mm-hmm.
Make yourself scarce. Go away. And who was she talking to on the phone? Or not that she was talking to someone. She came in. There was a group of guys torturing that guy, and she gave him the phone, and whoever he was talking to, he got very deferential to.
Oh, it must have been something to do with like an agreement that was made between Britain and Russia to let her interrogate him or something, right? Because they're all Russians in there. So that's what my thought was. It was somebody giving approval to say, yes, she's cool, like let her do this. But even the fourth thought she had of being like, so where's the escape hatch? Because she knew somebody was going to be coming in there, which was Gravik's team.
Yeah.
And she's able to bolt out of here. And I mean, Gravik puts this guy down because he knows he talked, right? Like,
yeah.
He's like, what'd you tell him? He's like, nothing.
You gotta go. Look, I'm not saying anybody needs to get killed, but that's one of those situations where at that point, like, the guy kind of knew. I think he knew where he said, like, Gravik's gonna kill me. And she even made the comment, like, do you think, Gravik will even get it? If you don't tell me, do you think Gravik's gonna even get a chance, right? So basically, she's like, look, you're dying one way or the other. So, you can extend your life by a couple hours, maybe, if you tell me what I want. So Gravik fight, like they go. Gravik comes in, they slaughter all the Russians. They pick up the guy, they take him, and I think Gravik knew right off the bat that he had probably gave up some info, right? But he's like, maybe there's a chance. They saw that the safe house got raided. So at that point, I think at that point, that's kind of one of those situations where, like in a mob movie, where they're like, hey, let's go for a drive. Like, the guy who's going for a drive knows this is his last drive. Like, he's thinking there's probably a chance maybe I can live through this, but he knows, like, I've seen this enough times. I've been on the other side of this. Like, this is where it ends. Like I know how this drive ends. And, it's unfortunate, but.
See, I don't even think he knew it because he was so out of it with the drug they gave him that burned him up. Because he mentioned to his friend, like, "Are we almost home or something?"
Did we make it home or something?
Yeah,
his friend was like, "Yeah."
Now, my question is, when they shoot him and leave him in the woods, why are they leaving him in the woods? Like, he's going to turn back into a Skrull. Somebody could stumble upon that.
But okay, so I don't think anybody's going to find his body because remember they were using like a bunch of old abandoned nuclear power plants.
Oh, right.
That are scattered around Russia. Most of those probably just because who knows what else was going on there. So the Russians don't want anybody to see it. There's probably all kinds of nuclear leakage in that aspect, right? Radiation things. So they said that's actually one of the reasons the Skrulls went there was because they don't have to worry about the radiation.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, imagine on the outskirts of Chernobyl, right? Like, yeah, we have people who do random, I forget what it's called, urban exploration or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
where they go around these abandoned places. But nobody's like roaming around this old abandoned
Right.
Russian nuclear power plant trying to see what's going on there. Because one, they'll probably die from whoever's
Right.
keeping it. Two, they'll probably die within months from the radiation. So
Good point. Good point. Um, all right. Anything else to say before we jump out of here? I think we covered most of this stuff pretty well here.
I think it's doing a good I think it's doing a good job of keeping at least me intrigued and not knowing what's going on or who to trust from moment to moment. Um, Fury's bridges are all burned, so now he's got to kind of figure out where to go from here. Um, I want to know more about that. I definitely got to find out about his wife because this is just it's boggling my
I think
mind.
that's next week. I think they'll definitely.
You can't drop a bomb on us like Nick Fury. Not only is Nick Fury married, but he's married to a Skrull, and then just never mention it again.
Right. Right. No, I think we might get a little history of their relationship through some flashbacks or something next week.
How are you feeling about Emilia Clarke's character so far? Not saying she's not doing a good
No,
or
no,
bad
no.
job right now. I think she's doing a great job.
She's had a lot of silent scenes where she's just watching and really. So I'm having trouble figuring out
What side she's on or who she's really with.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what they want right now. I do think that's what
Okay.
the show wants.
And that was my thing. Like she's
Yeah.
a big name that's attached to the project, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's probably the biggest name outside of Samuel L. Jackson, the
Yeah.
guy who's playing Talos. Like she's probably the biggest name of someone who's not an Avenger who's gonna pop in like Rhodey for like one episode here.
Well, and
right?
I think we'll get a lot of her in the back half. Like I think we'll get a lot of her in like 4, 5, and 6. I think we might. I think she'll be instrumental to Gravik's fall. Obviously, Gravik can't win, right? Because at
We
a
still
certain
have
point,
Secret Wars a couple years down the road, so you never know.
yeah, but I don't think it's supposed to tie into this part specifically. Marvel just likes the word secret, the way that DC likes the word crisis. But what I do want to say too is, what did you think of Rhodey asking about bringing in his friends, the Avengers, and Nick Fury, saying like, no, we don't want to get them involved, right? Because then the Skrulls will take their powers and we'll have
Yes,
It was a great explanation.
and that was something you talked about last week, where you said in the comics that we find out that some of the Avengers and various people have been captured by the Skrulls.
Yeah,
They've actually been Skrulls for years, all along, and that's true. Like, do you want? Okay, obviously Tony Stark is on. I don't know if they would call it Peter Parker. He's got enough going on. But do you
they don't know who
want?
Peter Parker is anymore. They would have to just call Spider-Man.
This is true. But do you want who else is left? The Guardians are away doing the Guardian things.
They could bring
Thor-
Thor.
But Thor was with him until his
Mhm.
last movie. I haven't seen his last movie yet. So
Oh, okay, well, yeah, he does come back to Earth every so often, Thor. So they could get a hold of him. They could have got a hold of
like I don't. That's
like
the thing.
Captain Marvel.
I don't really know who's
She-Hulk,
left.
Bruce Banner.
If they know where he is.
Yeah, but I mean, if they call any of the Avengers in, even somebody that has a low power level like Monica Rambeau, I think that it's the danger there, right, of the Skrulls being able to replicate them, and either you have much more destruction than what Gravik is creating right now.
Yeah, Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah. So they point out, right, that 2,000 died in this square, and I want to say that's a realistic number. What's not realistic is that the Battle of New York, I think, only killed 79. The Avengers were on their A game that day. They saved a lot of lives.
Well, okay, so when we go to the Battle of New York, what part of New York City were they in?
They were right by Union Station, weren't they?
Probably. I'm just trying to think of like
that. It was a big part of. It was probably Manhattan.
and then you got to think once a bunch of stuff starts happening, people, it's not like it's not like 9/11 where once the towers hit, like everything shut down and people were just kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuck. I can imagine like people were still able with this because it was over such a prolonged it was such a prolonged battle. Once everything started happening, and it's after 9/11, so people were like, "Nah, man, I'm out of here." Like I like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so enough people might have been able to scatter, except for the people who were close, like who weren't able to make it. Look at what happened. How many people died in Sokovia?
Good question. Let me see if I can find that.
What was the African country that they were in? Um, that I think was.
177 civilians died in the Battle of Sokovia.
What about the African? What was it in the original Avengers in the beginning, or was it? No, not no. It was in what was the one with James Spader?
Oh, Age of Ultron.
They had the battle in Africa in Age of Ultron.
Oh yeah, the South Africa. I don't think anybody died there. I think they said 0 casualties. Well, especially because Tony threw him in a building that he bought that was being under construction. So
yeah, he bought the building. Like,
yeah,
because I remember the line, "How quickly can we buy this building?"
Yeah, but I don't think anybody else died in that Hulk Iron Man battle. So look, they've been very like keeping the death count slow, like small, and that's why like the Sokovia thing. Only 177 people died from that, then the fact that they made the Sokovia Accords and then with this 2,000 people dying in this bombing,
Well, let's not forget. Okay, so only 79 people died in Sokovia, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many refugees and how many people were displaced?
Oh yeah, because
pretty much all of Sokovia.
Yeah.
Because remember, they lifted up damn near the entire country out of the ground, and then how much damage was done from that?
Yeah.
And did that ever come down? Whatever ended up happening with that land?
I think they blew it up in space, right? Because they evacuated everybody onto the helicarriers.
They got the people off, right?
Yeah.
But there's still this massive hunk of rock and land from Earth that was up in the air. Like I never
think
thought
they
of
had
that
to blow
until
it
now.
up.
Like what
because
happened to it? Where'd it go?
I think they had to blow it up because the whole problem was if it fell, it would create an extinction event. Which is why he was doing it, right? He was pulling up to have it like collide as if it's an asteroid and create a whole extinction event. So I would think they had to blow it up. Or they somehow lowered it without any issues, but I don't remember the end of that.
It's not like a divot from a golf game where you can just put it kind of back in the ground and pat it down a couple times and you're good to go. Like it's at least an entire city, if not.
It was part of the city. I don't think it was the entire city, but it was a big chunk. Let me see if I can find the answer in a quick search here. But the city plummets, but Stark and Thor overload the machine and shatter the landmass. Yeah, so they blow it up.
Okay. You're some dude in the middle of Sokovia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're not in that city. You see all this go along. You're tending to your farm. Next thing you know, half of from Sokovia is blown up. And now all of a sudden comes crashing down onto you and your land. Like, how pissed are you going to be?
Oh, yeah, I'll be pissed. Yeah. And what we learned, right, in Civil War is that one of the mom that approaches Tony, like her son was just over there helping people in this country as a volunteer, and he died in the events of Sokovia. And that's also what happened too, is that some people that died were not just Sokovians, they were people from other countries. So it created the whole country, like the whole UN came together to do this. I guess that's a little different than just mostly the Russians dying in the Russian bomb, but I just think it is funny that it was, that has killed more people than any of the Avengers stuff has killed at this point. So Gravik, there you go, is killing people left and right, I guess. I think that's mostly it for this episode. But
good episode. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, me too. I'm hoping it keeps it up because I think these first 2 episodes have been really, really good. If they can keep it up for the next 4, I think this is a good option of being one of my favorites of the Disney Plus MCU shows because um, just the serious tone. You get some levity. I meant to mention it last week, but when Talos is saying he hasn't had his middle age crisis yet, and he asked Fury what he got for his, and he said the Avengers. Like I like that little exchange that they had too, but it's not like overly funny or anything. But yeah, so all of our where you can follow us is in the show notes. So you can use one of your 600 posts a day that you can view on Twitter to view our view our tweets.
I'm rationing mine out because as I told you yesterday, it's we got 4th of July coming up.
Yeah,
I'm a dork. I watch Independence Day every 4th of July because I went to go see it when it initially came out. So I'm going to publicly shame you right now because you haven't seen Independence Day yet.
I've seen some of it on TV.
But that's not the purpose of what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is, so there is a Twitter account that is called let me make sure I get this correct because it is awesome. Open up, iPhone. It is called ID4 in real time. So that was also one of the taglines for Independence Day was ID4. So imagine if they had Twitter in 1996 and it starts with it comes active once a year, right? And it usually starts the end of June, beginning of July, because everything that happens in Independence Day happens from like the 1st and 2nd of July.
Oh, okay.
The Battle for Earth takes place on the 4th of July. So imagine in 1996. How old were you in 1996?
5.
Oh, this would have been perfect for you. Will Smith is at the height of his Smithdom, right?
I saw Wild Wild West.
He's smithing like he has never smithed before,
uh-huh.
right? So he's a star in Independence Day, and it tweets like these things that have led up and what is happening in the world of Independence Day that led up to. So at the time of right now, where in Independence Day lore, spaceship has stopped, they've entered our atmosphere, and we finally have just seen spaceships come into our atmosphere. So the answer to the questions were, we're not alone in the world. Remember, this is 96, so they had to... Television is completely different, so television signals are all messed up.
Right.
They had to initiate the emergency broadcast system, right? And people are going banana hammock crazy because all these spaceships have come over major cities in the world. In Russia, in Moscow, France, in England. I think we had one in the United States. It was one that came over LA, DC, possibly Philadelphia, but New York City. So they went all over these major cities. And now they're starting to just kind of stabilize. So imagine like Twitter in 1996 if this were happening. and then there's stuff kind of cut from the movie where because it's coming from like a journalist type thing, so they're getting information like a source at the Pentagon says this, or sources are telling me this, stuff like that. So it's just it's an interesting dorky thing.
Okay, so I have a question for you then. It's on sale on iTunes. Okay, $4.99.
To buy?
What?
To buy?
To buy.
HD or regular?
HD. Or $7.99 with Independence Day Resurgence.
Okay, I have the disc copy of both of them.
Uh-huh.
I haven't watched Resurgence yet. I probably need to.
You should watch it July 5th.
but it's also one of those like because some of the cast didn't come back, it didn't get the
Yeah.
greatest of reviews.
No Will Smith, right?
But I don't know, for $3, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I might just snap and do it here.
I mean, for $3 to get your bait, or honestly, I mean, think of it as spending. What is it? You said $7.99?
Yeah.
I'd spend $7.99 for an HD copy of just the regular Independence Day.
Like, right. Yeah, it's on sale. Apparently on Vudu, it's $14.99 for Independence Day, and on Apple for some reason it's $4.99. So I just went to Apple and bought it. By the way, I want to just shout out this app. By the way, I use it all the time. It's called Just Watch. I don't know if anybody else uses it, but if you type in a movie or a TV show, it'll tell you what streaming service it's on, if it's on any, and it'll also tell you the current. It'll also tell you the current price it is on sale on any of these platforms like Amazon, Apple, and all that. But yeah, it's just called Just Watch, and I use it for everything. Like once you said Independence Day, I was like, okay, if I was to watch it, how am I gonna watch it? It's not streaming on anything other than Stars, so I was like, oh, it's on sale for like the renting price is $3.99 on Apple, and I could just spend another $1 to own it. So that's what I did. I actually bought the 2-pack though.
Honestly, it's like I said, Will Smith was smithing at his smithiest levels ever. It especially for the time and the effects they did, because I remember there were a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Obviously, you've seen where they blew up the White House and they blew up the Empire State Building and all these other things. And they used miniatures for it. And there was a whole thing where they talked about, a lot of special effects that they had to do that because obviously they can't blow up the White House, or they can't make a building of a replica of the White House and blow it up, because then the FBI is like, why are you trying to blow up the White House and things? So,
it's for the script we're doing.
Gosh.
Yeah, I'll try to watch it over the holiday. Is what I'll try to do here. But
also, okay, so when you're the one piece of advice I'll give you is when you're watching this, it's 20 some odd. It's almost 30 years. Jesus Christ!
Yeah, it's almost 30 years.
It's almost 30 years. It's about to hit its 30th anniversary. Okay, you said you were 5 years old, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And it's a sci-fi action movie. Imagine 5-year-old you watching this as you're watching the movie. Like, obviously, there's probably stuff you may not like about it now, but think about it from the aspect of you're 5 years old and your parents took you out of the Baltimore Sun and decided to go to the movie theater, right? Because it's the middle of July, it's hot. Like, hey, let's go to the movies where there's some air conditioning. You got some popcorn and a little freezy Coke or a little freezy cherry Coke or whatever your beverage of choice.
Slushy, yeah.
Right? Yes. 5-year-old Jordan is sitting in that seat watching this.
Yeah, I don't think I'll have a problem with it. I mean, I can let stuff go. Like, I know some people have problems watching like older films for special effects and stuff, but my favorite film trilogy is the Back to the Future trilogy, so I'm okay with older things. But yeah, some people have problems with it. I was watching Superman 1978 with my wife, and she was like, "These effects are bad." I'm like, "They were like top notch back in '78, though." I mean,
for the '70s, yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Same thing with Star Wars. The original Star Wars. All right. Well, like I said, all of our social media is in the show notes. Use one of your 600 tweets to look at that, and we will catch you all next week when we talk episode 3 of Secret Invasion. Will be halfway done, and if you are American and celebrating July 4th, have a great holiday. And
Be safe.
Yeah,
drinking and fireworks will end up with you in the emergency room. Be safe and take care of your pets. Remember, these dogs and cats don't like the fireworks, so take care of your pets. Think about them when you're blowing stuff up.
Yeah, we'll leave it with that.